In every relationship, whether it's love, friendship, or family, expectations quietly take root. They begin as small hopes, but when left unchecked, they grow into demands that burden the bond. Most people don't realize that expectations are like invisible contracts we sign in our minds without ever informing the other person. And when they don't fulfill their part, one they never even agreed to, we feel hurt, disappointed, or angry. We often expect our partners to understand us without words, our friends to always prioritize us, and our family to support us no matter what. But when life doesn't match those expectations, we begin to feel unloved or unappreciated. The truth is, disappointment doesn't come from what others do to us. It comes from the gap between our expectation and their reality. So how do we deal with expectations? We begin by understanding that love is not a transaction, it's a gift. You don't love someone to get something back. You love because it makes your soul full. When you give without demanding, you free yourself from the prison of expectations. Relationships thrive not when both people are perfect, but when both people learn to give understanding instead of judgment. Instead of asking, "Why didn't they do this for me?" ask, "What can I do to make this relationship better?" Instead of saying, "They never listen to me," ask, "Have I really listened to them?" It's easy to count what's missing, but true love counts what's present. Remember, expectation creates distance, but appreciation creates closeness. If we focus on gratitude rather than grievances, our relationships bloom. The happiest couples are not those who expect less, but those who appreciate more. A relationship without expectations doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start understanding. You stop demanding perfection and start accepting humanity. When we let go of unrealistic expectations, we make room for real love, love that's kind, forgiving, and unconditional. So next time you feel disappointed, pause and ask yourself, am I expecting too much? Or am I appreciating too little? Because peace in relationships isn't about having everything perfect. It's about accepting imperfection with love and patience. Expectations in relationships often form unconsciously and become often become invisible demands. When two people connect, they naturally begin to hope and dream about how the relationship should feel and function. These hopes are not wrong. They come from our human desire for love, care, and understanding. But the problem begins when these hopes silently evolve into expectations, rules that exist only in our minds. We start to believe that the other person should automatically know what we want, how we feel, and what we need. Without realizing it, we begin to measure love through our own unspoken standards. For instance, a person might think, if they really loved me, they would call me first, or they should know I'm upset without me saying it. These are small, invisible demands, but over time, they build walls of misunderstanding. The other person, unaware of these expectations, may act differently, not because they don't care, but because they express love in another way. When that happens, disappointment enters quietly, and the heart begins to feel unloved. Yet the truth is, they didn't break a promise. They simply didn't live up to an expectation that was never communicated. Invisible expectations are dangerous because they are silent. They create emotional pressure that the other person cannot see but deeply feels. Slowly, a relationship that once felt free and joyful begins to feel heavy. You start noticing every little thing they don't do instead of the many things they do. You stop appreciating their efforts because you're too focused on how they failed to meet your inner checklist. These invisible demands start to control your emotions. You feel happy when expectations are met and sad or angry when they're not. In this way, love becomes conditional, based on performance rather than genuine affection. It's also important to understand that expectations often reflect our own insecurities and unhealed wounds. We expect constant reassurance because we fear being forgotten. We expect perfection because we fear rejection. These are not flaws, they're signs of humanity. But when we let these fears guide our expectations, we turn love into a test rather than a connection. The real challenge is to recognize these hidden patterns within ourselves. Instead of asking others to meet our unspoken needs, we must learn to express them openly and honestly. Communication transforms invisible demands into mutual understanding. When we learn to recognize that expectations are our own creations, we gain emotional freedom. We stop taking everything personally. We begin to see that others are not failing us. They are simply being themselves. Every person has a unique way of showing love, care, and respect. Some express it through words, others through actions, and some through silent presence. If we expect love to look only one way, we will miss countless moments of affection that don't fit our script. In a healthy relationship, love flows without the burden of constant evaluation. When you release invisible expectations, you allow space for authenticity. You stop trying to mold the other person into an image you have in mind and begin to appreciate them for who they are. Relationships flourish when both people feel free to give, not pressured to perform. Love then becomes a journey of understanding, not a checklist of duties. The key is awareness. When you notice yourself expecting silently, pause and ask, did I ever communicate this? If not, talk openly, because clarity creates peace, and peace nurtures love. Disappointment arises not from others' actions, but from the gap between expectation and reality. Most of the pain we experience in relationships isn't caused by what others do. It's caused by what we thought they would do. We create mental pictures of how people should behave, how they should treat us, and how they should respond in certain situations. When reality doesn't match that picture, we feel hurt, not because they intended to harm us, but because our mind attached itself to a version of them that doesn't exist. This gap, the difference between how things are and how we wanted them to be, is the root of our emotional suffering. Imagine expecting your partner to remember every special occasion, or expecting your friend to always stand by you no matter what. When they forget a date or fail to support you in a difficult moment, you immediately feel disappointed. But what really hurts is not their action, it's your attachment to how you thought they should act. The larger the expectation, the greater the disappointment when it's not met. This emotional equation holds true in almost every relationship. Disappointment is directly proportional to the distance between expectation and reality. Human relationships are built on emotions, and emotions are shaped by perception. When our perception of reality doesn't align with what we desire, we begin to experience frustration. This frustration often turns into blame. We start believing that the other person doesn't care enough, that they've changed, or that they're selfish. But in truth, they might simply be acting from their own reality, seeing life through their own experiences, thoughts, and priorities. Every person has their unique way of expressing affection and dealing with life. The moment we expect them to fit perfectly into our own script, we invite disappointment. Understanding this truth doesn't mean we should stop expecting anything at all. It means we should become aware of what we expect and why. Are our expectations realistic? Or are they shaped by idealized fantasies we've absorbed from movies, stories, or social media? We often compare our relationships to the ones we see online, where everything looks perfect. Every couple seems deeply connected, and every friend appears loyal. But real life doesn't work that way. People make mistakes, forget things, and sometimes fail to meet emotional needs. Not because they don't care, but because they're human. Learning to bridge the gap between expectation and reality requires emotional maturity. It means choosing understanding over judgment. When someone doesn't act the way you hoped, pause before reacting. Ask yourself, did they truly mean to hurt me? Or did my expectation create this pain? This shift in perspective turns disappointment into insight. Instead of blaming, you start learning. Instead of resenting, you start understanding. When we adjust our expectations to align more closely with reality, peace enters our hearts. It doesn't mean lowering standards. It means embracing life as it is, not as we imagine it should be. A healthy relationship isn't about controlling outcomes. It's about managing emotions. The more flexible your expectations, the more peaceful your mind becomes. When we understand that people are imperfect, that life doesn't always unfold according to our plans, we begin to live with compassion. We start appreciating the moments that do go right instead of focusing on the ones that don't. The real beauty of relationships emerges when we accept this gap with grace. When you can love someone despite the mismatch between your expectations and their reality, that's where true connection grows. Because love isn't about perfection. It's about patience, forgiveness, and understanding that every person is doing the best they can from where they are. Love should be treated as a gift, not a transaction. Give without demanding something in return. True love flows freely. It is not bound by conditions, expectations, or a mental balance sheet of give and take. Yet, in most relationships, people unconsciously turn love into an exchange. I did this for you, so you should do that for me. I showed you care, so you owe me attention. This transactional mindset silently poisons relationships because love that expects repayment ceases to be love. It becomes a contract. Genuine affection comes from a space of abundance where the act of giving itself brings fulfillment, not the outcome that follows. When love becomes transactional, it shifts from generosity to calculation. Every gesture, every conversation starts to carry hidden expectations. A person gives affection not out of pure care, but to receive validation, recognition, or reciprocation. Slowly, the relationship loses its warmth. It becomes an emotional marketplace where both partners are keeping score. One counts the number of calls, the other counts the number of sacrifices. But love doesn't survive in numbers, it thrives in sincerity. True connection isn't built through exchange, but through understanding and selflessness. The beauty of genuine love lies in giving freely without the pressure of return. When you give love without expecting, you discover the joy of selflessness. You realize that your happiness does not depend on how others respond, but on the purity of your intention. This kind of love liberates both people. The giver feels fulfilled, and the receiver feels genuinely cared for, not manipulated or indebted. When love comes without hidden conditions, it becomes a source of peace rather than stress. However, this doesn't mean allowing yourself to be taken for granted. Giving without expectation doesn't mean losing self, respect, or tolerating neglect. It means doing what you do from the heart, not from the hope of reward. For example, when you cook for someone, do it with love because it makes you happy to care for them, not because you expect praise. When you help your partner, do it because their well-being matters to you, not because you want them to owe you something. When both individuals give from this space of unconditional care, love multiplies naturally. In today's world, where relationships are often measured by effort and return, this concept may seem idealistic. But think about it. When was the last time you did something purely out of love, expecting nothing in return? The peace that follows such an act is priceless. The absence of expectation frees you from disappointment. You no longer suffer because someone didn't meet your imagined standard. Instead, you find contentment in the very act of giving. That is the essence of love. It enriches you the moment it leaves you. When you treat love as a transaction, you are always waiting for a response. But when you treat love as a gift, you are always at peace. Gifts are meant to be given, not demanded back. The energy of giving creates harmony, while the energy of demanding creates tension. When you love selflessly, even small gestures become sacred. A smile, a kind word, a simple act of care, these carry more weight than grand gestures done for attention. Ultimately, Love as a gift transforms relationships into sanctuaries of peace. Both people begin to feel safe, seen, and valued. The focus shifts from what can I get to what can I give. That shift changes everything. Love stops being about fairness and starts being about freedom. The freedom to give joyfully, to care without calculation, and to connect without conditions. Because real love isn't about completing a transaction, it's about sharing a piece of your heart without keeping the receipt. Understanding and empathy strengthen bonds more than blame or complaint. In any relationship, conflict is inevitable because two individuals bring different minds, emotions, and experiences into one shared space. But how we handle that conflict determines whether love deepens or fades. Many people react to problems with blame. They point fingers, accuse, and highlight faults, thinking this will make the other person understand their pain. However, blame rarely heals. It usually builds walls. When someone feels blamed, their first instinct is to defend themselves, not to listen. As a result, the real issue remains unresolved, buried under layers of resentment and misunderstanding. Empathy, on the other hand, opens doors that blame can never unlock. It allows you to step outside your own emotions and step into the world of the other person. When you choose to understand rather than accuse, the energy of the conversation changes completely. Instead of saying, "You never listen to me," you might say, "Sometimes I feel unheard, and it makes me sad." That small change in language comes from empathy. It expresses your feeling without attacking the other person's character. When you communicate from a place of understanding, the other person feels safe, not judged. And when people feel safe, they open their hearts. In every bond, whether romantic, familial, or friendly, the real strength lies in emotional connection. That connection is built not through perfection, but through compassion. It's easy to love someone when everything is going well. But when disagreements arise, that's when the depth of love is tested. If during those moments you can still see the other person's pain behind their anger, you've learned the art of empathy. You begin to see that their harsh words are often a reflection of their own frustration or fear. This doesn't mean justifying hurtful behavior. It means recognizing the emotion behind it. When you can understand the cause, it becomes easier to forgive the effect. Blame keeps relationships stuck in cycles of argument and defensiveness, while empathy moves them toward healing. For instance, imagine your partner forgets an important date. Blame says, "You don't care about me." Empathy says, "I know you've been busy lately, but I felt hurt when the day passed unnoticed." The first response triggers guilt and resistance. The second invites understanding and repair. This shift in tone transforms conflict into connection. It's not about who's right. It's about how you both can feel understood. Empathy also requires patience. Sometimes people are unable to meet our expectations not because they don't love us, but because they don't fully understand what we need. Instead of criticizing, we can gently communicate our feelings. Every time we choose understanding over accusation, we teach the other person how to love us better. And every time they do the same, they teach us how to love them more deeply. The beauty of empathy is that it nourishes both sides. The giver of empathy finds peace because they no longer carry anger, and the receiver feels valued and accepted. Over time, this emotional safety creates a strong foundation of trust. Trust doesn't grow from perfection. It grows from the comfort of knowing you'll still be understood even when you make mistakes. So, while blame divides hearts, empathy unites them. When you replace judgment with curiosity, when you ask, why are they feeling this way? Instead of, how could they do this to me? You start to see love as a shared journey, not a competition. The strength of any relationship is not measured by how few arguments you have, but by how much understanding you bring to each one. And that understanding, rooted in empathy, is what transforms ordinary relationships into lifelong connections. Instead of focusing on what you didn't receive, focus on what you can give. Most people enter relationships with a list, sometimes visible, sometimes hidden, of what they want to get: attention, affection, time, support, or validation. While these desires are natural, the problem begins when they become the center of our relationship. When the mind constantly counts what it lacks, it blinds itself to what is already present. This constant focus on deficiency breeds dissatisfaction. And dissatisfaction silently erodes the joy that once brought two people together. Every meaningful relationship thrives on giving, not demanding. When you focus only on what you're not getting, you begin to see the other person as the source of your unhappiness. You start believing they are not doing enough, caring enough, or loving enough. But when you shift your perspective and ask, what can I contribute to make this relationship better? You take back your power. Giving brings fulfillment because it comes from abundance. It transforms you from a seeker of love to a creator of love. You stop waiting for happiness to come from others and begin to generate it within yourself. Relationships are not transactions, they are emotional investments. The more love, patience, and kindness you deposit, the stronger the bond becomes. When you focus on giving, whether it's time, understanding, or encouragement, you nourish the connection in ways that receiving never can. Giving doesn't mean grand gestures. Sometimes it's as simple as listening without interrupting, offering a hug, or being patient during a tough moment. These small acts have a profound impact because they come from sincerity, not obligation. It's human nature to crave appreciation, but constantly seeking it can lead to disappointment. When you give out of expectation, your act becomes conditional. If the appreciation doesn't come, you feel resentment. But when you give from the heart, you experience joy regardless of how the other person responds. This kind of giving purifies love. It removes ego, pride, and calculation. You no longer give to be noticed. You give because giving itself makes you feel alive. Consider this truth. When two people in a relationship both focus on what they can give rather than what they can get, love multiplies effortlessly. There is no competition, no imbalance, no scorekeeping, only mutual care. One's effort inspires the other, creating a continuous cycle of kindness and gratitude. In such a relationship, both people grow emotionally and spiritually because the focus is no longer on me, but we. When love flows from both sides freely, there's no emptiness left to fill. Shifting from a mindset of getting to a mindset of giving also changes how you handle problems. Instead of saying, "You don't do enough for me," you begin to ask, "What can I do to improve this situation?" This attitude not only softens conflict, but also earns respect. Giving in moments of difficulty is far more powerful than giving in moments of ease. It shows maturity, compassion, and genuine love. Giving doesn't mean neglecting your own needs. It means balancing self-care with selflessness. When your heart is full, you can give without feeling depleted. The joy of giving is that it doesn't reduce what you have, it increases it. The more love you give, the more love you feel. When you focus on contribution, you start noticing how abundant your relationship already is. Gratitude replaces complaint, and connection replaces comparison. Ultimately, love grows where giving exists. When you choose to give instead of expecting, you rise above ego and step into the true essence of love. You no longer wait to be loved, you become love itself. The more you give, the more fulfilled you become, and that fulfillment radiates, nurturing everyone around you. Listening deeply to others builds emotional connection and reduces conflict. In most relationships, people hear each other but rarely listen. Hearing is passive. It only involves the ears. Listening, however, is active. It involves the heart. True listening means putting your own thoughts, judgments, and emotions aside for a while and giving your full attention to the other person. When someone feels genuinely listened to, they also feel valued. They sense that their feelings matter, that their voice has a place. This simple act of deep listening can heal wounds that even the most eloquent words cannot. One of the biggest reasons relationships struggle is that everyone wants to be understood, but very few are willing to understand. We rush to respond, defend, or correct instead of pausing to absorb what the other person is truly saying. In arguments, both people are often talking at the same time, waiting for their turn to speak instead of genuinely listening. As a result, communication turns into competition, and understanding turns into misunderstanding. Real listening isn't about waiting for your chance to reply. It's about giving someone the space to express themselves without fear of being interrupted or judged. When you listen deeply, you create emotional safety. The other person begins to open up, not because you have the right answers, but because you are present. Sometimes people don't need advice. They just need to feel heard. They need someone who can sit beside them in silence and say, without words, I'm here with you. That kind of presence builds trust more than any solution ever could. When you offer this level of listening, you're telling the other person, you matter. Your emotions are important. Deep listening also helps you see beyond words. Often, what people say isn't exactly what they feel. Anger may hide hurt, silence may hide fear, and laughter may hide sadness. When you listen not just to the words, but to the emotions behind them, you connect with the person's true self. You start to recognize their struggles, their insecurities, and their needs. This awareness makes your responses gentler and wiser. You stop reacting impulsively and start responding compassionately. Listening deeply doesn't mean agreeing with everything someone says. It means understanding where they are coming from before you express your own view. When you do this, disagreements lose their sharpness. Even if your opinions differ, mutual respect grows. You can say, I see your point, instead of, you're wrong. That one sentence can dissolve the tension instantly. People don't always need to be right. They just need to be understood. In moments of conflict, listening becomes even more powerful. When tempers rise, silence is often more healing than speech. If you allow someone to vent without interruption, you give them space to release their emotions safely. Once they feel heard, their defensiveness softens and genuine dialogue becomes possible. Many arguments could end peacefully if one person simply chose to listen first, instead of fighting to be right. Listening deeply is also a reflection of humility. It shows that you care more about understanding the person than proving yourself. It's a sign of emotional maturity because it requires patience, presence, and empathy. The more you practice it, the more peaceful your relationships become. You begin to realize that many conflicts are not about big differences, but about the small moments when someone just wanted to be heard and wasn't. Ultimately, listening is one of the purest forms of love. It doesn't cost anything, yet it has the power to transform relationships completely. When you truly listen, you give someone the gift of being seen and understood, and that gift often leads to healing, harmony, and deeper connection. Appreciation nurtures relationships while expectation strains them. In every bond, appreciation acts like sunlight. It warms, heals, and helps love grow. Expectation, on the other hand, is like shade. Too much of it, and the relationship begins to wither. When we constantly expect people to meet our standards or fulfill our emotional needs, we unknowingly place them under pressure. But when we appreciate them for who they are and what they already do, we create an atmosphere of peace and encouragement. Appreciation invites love to flow freely, while expectation creates invisible walls that suffocate it. Many relationships start beautifully because they are filled with gratitude and admiration. In the beginning, every small gesture feels special, a message, a smile, a kind word. But over time, what was once appreciated becomes expected. The same actions that once brought joy now seem ordinary. Thank you becomes rare, and appreciation is replaced by a sense of entitlement. This is where the emotional distance begins. When love is taken for granted, its warmth slowly fades. People don't stop loving because they want to. They stop feeling valued. And that changes everything. Appreciation is more than just saying, "Thank you." It is an attitude of seeing goodness in others, even in their imperfections. It's choosing to notice effort instead of errors. When you tell someone, "I appreciate what you did," or "I'm grateful for your presence," you strengthen the emotional connection. Everyone wants to feel recognized and valued, and appreciation fulfills that fundamental need. When you express gratitude, you're not only giving joy to the other person, you're also cultivating it within yourself. Gratitude shifts your focus from what's lacking to what's abundant, from complaints to blessings. Expectation, on the other hand, often leads to disappointment. When you expect too much from people, you stop seeing their reality. You start comparing them to an ideal version you've created in your mind. The moment they fail to meet that ideal, frustration creeps in. You begin to say things like, "You never do enough," or "You've changed." These words hurt deeply, not because they're always true, but because they carry the weight of unfulfilled expectation. Relationships burdened by constant expectation eventually become transactional. People start doing things not out of love, but out of obligation. Appreciation brings joy because it reminds both people of what they share. It's a simple practice, but its power is immense. Imagine walking into a home where you are constantly criticized versus one where your efforts are acknowledged. The difference is emotional oxygen. Where criticism suffocates, appreciation allows love to breathe. Even small acts of gratitude, a note, a compliment, a smile, can revive connection in ways that words of demand never could. When you choose appreciation over expectation, you transform the energy of your relationship. You start noticing the little things, the way your partner listens, your friend checks on you, your parents support you silently. These gestures, though often small, are the foundation of love. By acknowledging them, you tell the other person, "I see you. I value you." That sense of being seen is one of the greatest gifts in any bond. It's also important to appreciate not just actions but presence. Sometimes, the mere fact that someone stays with you through difficult times is reason enough to be grateful. True appreciation is not about perfection. It's about recognizing effort, loyalty, and care. The more you practice gratitude, the less room you leave for resentment. The more you appreciate, the more reasons you'll find to continue appreciating. In the end, every relationship is a reflection of where your attention goes. Focus on what's missing, and you'll feel empty. Focus on what's good, and your heart will overflow. Appreciation turns ordinary relationships into extraordinary ones because it feeds love, respect, and kindness. Three things no bond can survive without. Real love accepts flaws and imperfections rather than chasing idealism. In a world where everything is filtered, edited, and polished, we often begin to believe that perfection is love's standard. We see perfect couples on screens, perfect families on social media, and perfect friendships that seem effortless. Slowly, we internalize these illusions and start expecting the same in our own relationships. But love was never meant to be flawless. It was meant to be real. The beauty of love lies not in perfection, but in acceptance. When you love someone, you don't love their perfection, you love them in spite of their imperfections. Every person carries their own weaknesses, fears, and mistakes. Expecting someone to be perfect is like expecting a flower to bloom without sunlight. It's simply not possible. When you demand flawlessness, you're setting up both yourself and the other person for disappointment. Real love doesn't say, "I love you when you change." It says, "I love you even when you falter." It doesn't mean you ignore problems or accept harmful behavior. It means you recognize that imperfections is part of being human. Love that lasts isn't built on fantasy. It's built on forgiveness, understanding, and patience. True relationships thrive when both people can be authentic without fear of judgment. When you know you can be yourself, honest, vulnerable, imperfect, and still be loved, that's when real intimacy begins. It's not about pretending to be flawless. It's about being genuine. When you stop expecting perfection, you create space for trust. The other person feels safe to express their truth without hiding behind masks. This safety allows love to deepen because love grows best where honesty is welcomed. Chasing idealism in relationships often leads to frustration. The desire for a perfect partner or perfect relationship blinds us to the beauty of what we already have. You might start thinking, if only they were more like this, or if only things were easier. But love isn't meant to be effortless. It's meant to be nurturing. Growth happens through challenges, not through perfection. The couples who seem happiest are not those who never argue, but those who learn to handle disagreements with compassion and humility. They don't walk away because of flaws, they walk through them together. When you accept imperfections, you also learn humility. You realize that just as others have their weaknesses, so do you. Love becomes a partnership of two imperfect people choosing to grow together rather than judging each other's shortcomings. Every flaw becomes an opportunity for deeper understanding, every mistake a moment for forgiveness, and every imperfection a reminder that love is not about finding someone flawless, but about learning to see perfection in imperfection. Perfection may look attractive, but it's exhausting to maintain. You can't build a lasting relationship on constant performance. Real love gives you room to breathe, to be messy, emotional, and human. When someone loves you as you are, you feel peace. When you love someone as they are, you give peace. That exchange of acceptance forms the unshakable core of any strong bond. Perfection-based love often fades quickly because it depends on conditions. I love you as long as you make me happy, or I love you as long as you meet my standards. But acceptance-based love endures because it comes from depth, not surface. It doesn't demand change, it inspires growth. It doesn't look for flawless beauty, it finds beauty in the cracks. The Japanese art of kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold, teaches that something broken can become even more beautiful when healed with care. Relationships are the same. The cracks and scars don't ruin love, they reveal its strength. Real love isn't perfect, it's patient. It doesn't need flawless people, it needs willing hearts. When you stop chasing idealism and start embracing humanity, you discover that the most beautiful kind of love is not the one that looks perfect, but the one that feels safe, honest, and real.